Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from around the world, welcome to podcast land, Facebook Live land. Obviously, you're joined here at the Longboard House. I'm one of the hosts, Dan Croskery, and of course, joining me with my partner in tip crime, Dan Proctor. How are you, cuz?
Mate, I've been pretty good. Just locked in a bit of tip crime this afternoon at Northerns. Followed up by a bit of tube time during the week, so it's been a pretty good week of waves for us here on the East Coast. But more to the point, bro, who we got on tonight? Let's go.
Mate, let's go. Episode 4. This is an epic one, cuz. You know, me and you have both been waiting for this. Everyone's been waiting for this. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to the 2006 ASP World Longboard Champion, 7-time Australian Longboard Champion, 5-time Noosa Festival Pro Champion, obviously the New Zealand Hyundai Tour Longboard Champion, 51 career titles, multiple Surfer Pole Awards, founder of Creator Army. It's a privilege and an honour to welcome one of the true gentlemen of the sport, Josh Constable. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, boys. It's awesome to be a part of the show, and yeah, I'm looking forward to a fun evening and talking a bit of surf and crap, and just, it's good to see you guys. It's been a long time, and yeah, I'm excited.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, we'll quickly run through the program of the show, and then we'll come back to you. And mate, we've got so many questions. We want to delve into your stellar career and talk all things Josh Constable. So obviously, we're gonna run through tonight. First off, with Josh's stellar career, his highlights. I'm going to ask a few questions. Dan's going to ask a few questions around, you know, some of those 51 career titles. We'll obviously ask Whakawhanangatanga's big here in New Zealand. So we're going to ask about your family, your wife, your sons. Then we're going to delve into a little bit about Creative Army, how you sort of come about that, what's happening for you now, and your partnership with GSI. And then we'll get into some, I guess, some WSL talk, bro. Talking about that sort of stuff, where we're heading with that, you know, your knowledge around all that sort of stuff, maybe comparing WSL with the Relic, and what's up next for Josh. And then, of course, we've got a couple of questions from our audience. So without further ado, mate, welcome to the show. It's good to have you. I've known you personally for a long time. You're one of longboarding's favourite sons, and obviously born and bred Noosa legend. Mate, how have you been?
Yeah, it's thanks for the intro, but yeah, it's been great. Life's good. Obviously, we're in a really weird situation at the moment with this whole COVID thing, but for us here in Noosa, we've been quite lucky. We live in a little bubble. We've kind of been on semi-lockdown, but we've been able to surf, and business has been great. Obviously, people are surfing, not much working, obviously no traveling. And so, you know, the Indo trips are off, so everyone's staying local, and the water's been busy. We've had heaps of waves. The last 8 weeks been great.
Yeah.
What's happening?
Yeah, we're back.
Did we lose Josh?
No, he's back.
Oh.
We back?
Oh, yeah. We got cut off. Sorry, Josh, there must have been some Wi-Fi issues in your bubble in Noosa. So, mate, those points, obviously no one traveling. Why would you travel when you live in Noosa? Obviously, you know, the Southern Hemisphere's best longboard wave. Mate, give us a rundown on how many people would you get at the point at any one time? I mean, like, let's say it's 3 to 4 foot, good cyclone swell, it's lining up. Let's go from first point to the boiling pot. What are we looking at?
Yeah, it's crazy these days. You know, obviously, when you were spending a lot of time here, longboarding wasn't as popular as what it is now. Surfing obviously is growing, and people are loving it. And we just have the perfect climate here. It's warm kind of year round. The water doesn't get too cold. So surfing's more popular than ever. It's hard to put a number on it, but there's hundreds of people out there. And sometimes you get a good wave and you're not even surfing the wave. You're actually dodging boards and people and legs flying out of the lips. And yeah, it's crazy. But, you know, it's all we know. We grow up here. We surf at every swell. And we kind of don't know any different. You know, obviously I've been blessed to be able to travel and surf empty, perfect waves, but it's home. I wouldn't have it any other way. And, you know, when Noosa's doing its thing and First Point is breaking and the sand's perfect, it's one of the best longboard waves in the world. And I just feel so blessed to be able to grow up here and hone my skills on the points at Noosa. And it's been great for my career.
Mate, that First Point, oh, tell you, that is, it's if anything is close to a wave machine, mate, First Point is as close to a natural wave machine as you can get, mate. So look, I'm going to delve into a couple of, at least Proc, you want to add anything, Cuzzy?
I was just wondering, Josh, you know, firstly, thanks heaps, brother, for coming on. And secondly, I don't know how you keep such a nice hairdo, bro, with so many guys out in the lineup. You must get people swinging past you. I've been out there once and you're sitting literally 30 centimeters apart and trying to swing your board around is just about impossible.
Yeah, it does get crazy out there for sure. But, you know, the waves are so perfect and we get a lot of people on holiday, so everyone's kind of well behaved in the lineup. And, you know, obviously like all local spots, the locals kind of know where to sit and which are the good waves. And we definitely get our fair share and everyone has a good time out there. But yeah, man, definitely it's sometimes it's pretty hectic out there.
Yeah, but I see you like Jesus when you paddle out, Josh. You paddle out there and just everyone parts. Here comes Josh Constable. Boom, you know. And, you know, one thing, you're never greedy, mate. You always give away waves. You know, you're always on the best ones, but that's just local knowledge. And, mate, and you're such a beautiful surfer to watch on any craft.
Yeah, well, I guess that comes, you know, we all grew up here. We learned to surf and on the points, especially at First Point and hone our longboard skills. But all us guys, Harrison Roach and Jai Lee, and there's so many greats. The Dickies, Trent Dickey. There's so many good us guys. We all learned to surf out there, so we had to pay our dues to the older generation. But those older guys taught us, you know, the rules and how it works out there and wait your turn. And yeah, it works pretty good. But I'm happy to get my fair share and definitely be patient and be on those good ones.
Yeah. So look, I think the whole when I moved to sort of Noosa, I think the greatest thing about Noosa for me was that how welcoming everyone was. You know, that first point local family community. You know, there's nothing like it. And once you get accepted into that community, and you've got to run of the points, and everyone just takes you under their wing. You know, it's such an amazing little spot and amazing town. And you know, I know it's a Aboriginal healing spot, and you can definitely feel that when you go there. You know, you got this natural Indigenous power that comes with those points. And mate, you know, I owe so much to the likes of your dad and everyone else at that First Point for taking me in and making me one of them. And like you said, it is crazy, but you still get waves and you share the stuff. And like you said, you don't know any different. So, you know, I've got nothing but amazing memories from back there. But look, Josh, I'm going to delve into some of your career highlights, if you don't mind.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so for me, 1998, obviously you went over to America and, mate, you placed in the US Open of longboarding, which as a 17-year-old, and I was 23 back then, and I just come in and I was hanging around Noosa, and there's a lot of big hitters. Mate, for a 17-year-old from Noosa to place in the final in America was huge, mate. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was a really amazing, like an amazing trip. Like you said, I was 17. It was kind of my first real international trip. The year before, I was 16. I competed at the Oxbow event at Makaha, but I was a kid. My surfing was, you know, still not up to scratch. I'd had nice success in Australia, you know, a great junior career, but I think that was a real learning curve for me. It was a great part of it was almost, that was the kickstart of my career for sure. I went over there to compete. I went over for 2 weeks, trip to California, do the US Open. And yeah, I was surfing with my idols. But yeah, I love the wave. You know, Huntington gets a really bad rap, but I just love those waves. At the time, it was all high performance. It was head high, peaky, wedgy break. and yeah, just had great success there. And that event definitely was the start of my career. It gave me the belief that I was good enough. I remember I had a really tight battle with Josh Baxter in the semi-final. And that guy to me was, he was one of my idols. I looked at that guy, amazing footwork, great nose rider, and then obviously just had an amazing style, and off the tail, he was so strong. So yeah, we had this paddle battle and hassle, and this guy was, you know, a fair bit older than me, but, you know, I didn't take a backward step. I definitely was there to do as good as I could in the contest, and made that final. And Colin McPhillips, Joel Tudor, two icons of our sport, and yeah, to walk away with that. And I guess I made the final, made some prize money, and rang my parents and said, hey, change my ticket, I'm staying longer, you know, there's another contest next weekend. And this went on for about a month, and all of a sudden I kept doing well. There was, in the summertime in California, there's contests every weekend, so I had a great network of friends that I met. I was hanging with Jeff Moyser, that guy was a big influence on my surfing. And yeah, it was cool. It was super cool. It was a rad trip. And after about a month, my dad rang me, goes, I'll be there in the morning at the airport, come and pick me up at LAX. And I was like, oh shit, what's going on here? Anyway, I picked him up, and he was like, had to come over, see what you're up to, you know, what's going on. And at that stage, I was 4 weeks into the trip, and I was like, oh, I'm staying for the whole summer. This place is epic. The waves are sick. Yeah, anyway, I got this job in a surf shop, and the guy was just looking after, paying some bills for me, put me entries into the contest, and he was a great guy, and took me under his wing. And yeah, the rest is history. You know, I ended up staying for 6 months, met Anna on that trip. She ended up coming home with me. Yeah, it was awesome. We had a great time, and definitely that trip was the start of my my longboard career. At that time, I was still competing on the shortboard junior series events, and I was in this crossover stage. I didn't know sort of where my career was going. I was riding for McTavish at the time. On that trip, McTavish came over. We did a big tour around the US with Ray Gleave, Jason Blewett, Marcus Abudi. So yeah, I was hanging with, you know, those guys were royalty, and I got to hang with them, and had this great success in the US Open. And yeah, we just had a killer trip, and yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, because putting in perspective, Josh, like, I think, well, you're the first foreigner to make the final at that.
Yeah, first international surfer to make the final of the US Open. So yeah, that was huge. And I guess just now that I look back at it, at the time I was just going through the paces. You know, I was 17 years old, hanging out in America, surfing contests, doing what I wanted to do. You know, but I look at it now, and it was a very big stepping stone in my career, and definitely paved the way for the future that I had.
So yeah, hey, you met your wife there, Anna.
Yeah.
Bit of a story connected to that. Yeah, I wonder if we could touch briefly on that. You know, obviously I was in Noosa at the time, and mate, it was a huge thing when, you know, Josh made, you know, you made the final, and everyone's in awe, and then you're the first Australian to, I guess, well, international person to grace the cover of Longboard magazine. And then there was a little bit of, I guess, nostalgia or hype around your now current wife, Anna, who was a very accomplished tandem surfer, married at the time. And mate, what happened there? How did you meet?
Yeah, she wasn't married at the time, but yeah, she was in a relation. She was in a relationship with her tandem partner, and doing their thing, you know. But obviously, it wasn't going well, and yeah, they ended up. I just got in there, and good. When I said I was,
the better man got the princess.
When I said I was from Noosa, there was no way I could get rid of her. She was like, "Man, I'm coming to live in paradise."
And how could you not blame her, mate? How could you not blame her? Top man, top spot, and the rest is history. Two beautiful kids. Proc, have you got any highlights you want to ask Josh?
Well, firstly, Joshy, just, the US Open and the media exposure that would have come your way. The California being kind of, the hotbed for the whole industry and where longboarding was headed at the time. As a 17-year-old, how did you handle the whole thing, bro? Because most guys couldn't handle it if they were, top level longboarders. But at being such a kid, how did you manage all this new fame and, I guess, responsibility, being the only Aussie guy that had ever cracked a final?
Yeah, I guess I didn't really kind of look at it like I had to represent Australia or I was the first Aussie to do that. But, I was just living in the moment. I was pumped. I was 17, hanging out in California. Waves were epic. I was winning contests, making finals. And I guess at that time, I got the cover of Pacific Longboarder and American Longboarder at the same time. It came out sort of the same month. It was actually the same photograph, but two different photographers from an epic session at D-Bar. So it was just all started to happen for me. I obviously made the final. Then the cover came out, and then McTavish Surfboards, they did this big US tour, and we went from shop to shop, state to state, both coasts. I don't know. I was just going with the flow. I was loving it. Every moment of it. It was epic. And and then I guess I came back to Australia later that year, and kind of still didn't realize, but it was the stepping stone. It was a real part of my career that I was like, okay, I'm going to focus on longboard surfing. Obviously the competitive shortboard thing took a bit of a back seat. Obviously I wasn't at the level that was going to make a career out of that. I could see I could make a career out of longboard surfing. I was having great success, and I loved America. Every summer, obviously because of Anna, the connection we had there, that so many friends, all my family, or her family, we're all there. So we just had this perfect little summertime in California, competing and basing out of there, and then coming back home to Australia for the summer. It was just a really good time. And
what a life.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
And back then, I guess longboarding, like through those 90s and early 2000s, or the late, mid to late 90s, there seemed to be a lot more money around for the likes of longboarders. And you've made a great career of being a true professional, is what I'd consider a true professional to be, both in and out of the water. Did you find that it's a lot harder now for kids than it was back then?
Yeah, totally. That 90s and early 2000, it was booming, and that's why I spent so much time in California. We were living in Anna's from St. Clemente. Longboard magazine was based out of St. Clemente, so I was surfing and cruising and hanging out up at the magazine all the time, going up, drinking coffee and just hanging out with all those guys. So I got a really good rapport with them, and obviously they loved my surfing and what I was doing, and they gave me a lot of love in the magazines, and it just opened up. I made so many connections and sponsors over in the US. And at the time, I got so lucky. I met a Japanese guy the Japanese loved California. And I met a Japanese guy that had a really successful business in Japan. And loved that I was spending, half the year in Oz, half the year in California, and, made some really great connections and sponsorship at that time that, was was a blessing. It was the pathway that I got to have the career I had.
Yeah, and what a great career.
And so getting back to the point, I guess, like back then, there was a big tour. There was a lot of events. Australia had a strong tour. New Zealand had a great tour, and the US had these great events. And then the world tour started kicking off. We had 5 events, and it was easy as a surfer to go to companies and ask for support because there was so much media and so much hype, and there was magazines, Pacific Longboard, Australian Longboarder, Slide in NZ.
Right, yeah.
So there was lots of opportunities to promote companies and promote businesses, and I guess that's why there was so much opportunity. Where now, it's a different world. It's this stuff, podcasts and Instagram, and it's different. So it's just for people finding their feet, and the young kids are just doing it differently now.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Proc, anything to ask?
If you're touching on the change and how we've moved, I guess you being a true blue professional, bro, if you had any tips, I guess, for that next young kid, whoever they may be, on how they might form a career as a longboarder. I don't know if you've seen it or heard of it or thought about it, but there seems to still be a market out there moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. I think there is a definite market out there. There's definitely, at the moment, longboarding went through a really funny stage the last sort of, I'd say, 10 years. And I think it's really positive at the moment. We've had Relic. Dan brought that up before. WSL's really jumping on board. Obviously, it's a whole different scene than what we were in our prime and what we were doing. It's high performance surfing. It's definitely changed. It's more traditional now, but if you want to be a professional and you want to win contests, and you've got to give the judges what they want to see. And at the moment, they want to see, traditional style surfing. But there's definitely still avenues down there for kids to make a career out of longboard surfing. I guess it's staying true to your roots, believing in yourself. You don't have to chase the fads or do what your friends are doing, or do your own thing, and believe in yourself, and don't be afraid to succeed. I noticed that in my career, I had friends that were surfed amazing, but there was some times that they were nervous. They didn't want to succeed because they didn't want to get haggled by their mates or feel like they were on top. The tall poppy syndrome. For me, it was a business. It was a job, and my job was to win contests and get exposure for my sponsors. And I treated it as my job, and I think that's all it is now. If kids want to get out there and do their thing, do it to your best of your ability, and make your own path and do it how you want to do it.
Yeah, because that's what I noticed about you, Josh, when I first met you, even as a young guy. Like, I was hanging around a bit more of the riff-raff sort of loud, the rugrats of longboarding at the time, mate. You know what I mean? But you stuck to the true essence of a professional surfer. And mate, there's always tall poppy syndrome, and people want to cut you down. But mate, I always admired the professionalism that you had, the cool, calm, and collectedness that you had, the true gentleman. And like I said, for me, you epitomized what you just spoke about, and a true professional in every aspect. So, mate, there's a lot of times in comps where you gave me waves where I'd be freaking out, and you just make cool, calm, and collected, just sitting at the back, go, "Cuz, have this one," and I'm just like, "What?" At the point, you just sit there and you just have two waves and you just clean up. So, mate, you're a true professional in every sense, mate. I used to love watching you. Mate, can we delve into another, I guess, a question from the audience, Flo? Someone got a question for Josh?
Yeah, we had two questions. I think one is a couple of boys and girls ask if Josh is still on the market. I think we covered that.
He's happily taken it for a long time.
And this old guy. I'm done and dusted.
And the second one is, how long do you think till your sons are better than you?
Yeah, well, I guess that at the moment that their surfing's coming on so strong that it's keeping me on my toes and making sure that I'm still surfing every day and doing the work to still be better than them. But man, the boys are surfing unreal, and we've never really pushed it on them. We've let them find their own feet and their own path. Obviously, Anna surfs every day. We both surf every day. So the kids are always dragged to the beach. There's always a van full of boards, from boogie boards, short, long, whatever, in the car. And whenever they're ready, they've obviously we've steered them in that direction, but we've never been super forceful. And but the last year, 2 years, they've really jumped on board and they love it and they're stoked on it. And Jet this year, he's 14, and he's
14.
surfing really, really good, and he's got a beautiful longboard style, and he's into it. He loves it. Jive's 11 now, and he's still just he's frothing. He's Jamie O'Brien's one of his favourites. He froths on Italo, but he's into softboards and finless and longboard, shortboard, and everything, and yeah, so he's just frothing out on all kinds of boards. But yeah, they're not far away. The boys had a great Noosa festival. It was their first major contest. This year we kept them away for a fair while from the competition side of things. Just let them enjoy it and enjoy their surfing. But this year we've joined the Noosa Malibu Club. The boys are surfing in all the events monthly, and they did the Noosa Festival back in February. And yeah, they both Jive, 11 years old, made the semi-final.
Cool.
Big Jetto knocked him out of his heat, out of that semi, and Jet made the final and ended up getting a third in the final. And yeah, I was chewing my nails and frothing out on the beach and whistling and hollering, and it's a pretty cool. But yeah, I'd much rather be surfing the heats than watching them. That's for sure. It's
Awesome,
pretty
Josh.
nerve-wracking.
Yeah, because that's what I was going to say. As a dad, I guess, they're from two pedigree water people with Anna and yourselves. They've got nothing to prove, but they're in such good company with you guys, and I love the way that you've always parented them. And like you said, you never push them as a parent. That's the key aspect, is never pushing them in to do it, and then they'll come around. So they've got some great teachers, and you two guys, mate. I want to delve into some more of your career. I'm going to ask about your, your first Australian Open longboard title. Where was it, and who was in it? Mate, talk us through that one, because that would always be a good one too, your first Australian one.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of people think that the 06 world title would probably be the highlight. I guess it was on that scale. It was a huge thing. It's a world title. It's what you dream of as a kid. But for me, that first Aussie title almost matches that, if not passes it. I'd had such great success in winning events, winning ASP and different pro events. But I'd had like 6 runner-ups in the Aussie titles. And 2 that were just, I had the win and lost it at the last minute, So that there were 6 runner-ups. So I was like, man, is this thing ever going to happen? I didn't know if I was ever going to win an Aussie title. I'd been so close. I'd won from round 1 through to the semi. I'd dominated the event. It was just like it was meant to happen, and it just never happened. I couldn't get it. So in 03, it was in South Australia. And yeah, I just had this amazing board under my feet. It was a Timmy Patterson that I'd got the year before when I was in California, hanging out in San Clemente, and had Timmy make me a bunch of boards. And I just had this magic one that I remember the first time I jumped on it, my old man came down the beach, and it was just on the open beaches at Bridgein, and I just had these couple of waves, and Dad's like hands in the air on the beach, just going, wow, that's the board. So I put it on ice, took it to the Aussies, and yeah, just one of those contests. Every heat went to plan. Finally got to the final, and there was pressure on me, but I knew it would happen eventually. But a lot of runner-ups, you start having these doubts in your mind if it was going to happen. But yeah, it just came together in that final. It was GT. Grant Thomas, one of the best Australia's ever seen. Jackson Close. I can't remember if it was Pioli or Harley Ingleby in that final. But obviously all great surfers, all won Aussie titles. GT never won an Aussie title, but Harley Jackson. So at that time, it was stacked. It was a stacked final. And yeah, I finally got the win. So it was, just the relief. The pressure was off. And yeah, it finally happened, So for me, that was probably one of the most special wins that I've had in my whole career, just because I was so close so many times. and that's the best in your country. That's what you want. And it finally happened. And then after that, the pressure was off. The belief that I had, that I could win it. I knew I could win it. I'd won so many other events. It just didn't seem to happen. And then this happened, and then I went on a little roll and won 3 in a row, and just kept going from there.
So Josh, with your runner-ups, with the 6 runner-ups, what do you think that came down to? Was it just luck, or nerves, or just because you lost it obviously in the last minutes, or was it just paddling priorities?
So I won in 03 in South Australia. That was my first one. In 02, it was at Yellingup. The waves were firing. The run leading up to the final was amazing. I just felt like it was mine. I was untouchable. That morning of the final, I snapped my favourite board, having a little warm up in the morning. But that didn't rattle me because I had so many good boards on that trip with me. But I surfed amazing in the final. I thought I won, but that's contests. They don't go your way. And I lost to a local surfer, Justin Redmond, an amazing surfer. And at the time, he was surfing amazing. But, that's contests. They don't go your way. You surf a final and you feel like, oh man, I've got that in the bag, and you come out and it doesn't happen. So that was a really tough one. That one felt like, that's one that got away for sure. I definitely felt like I had that one. That was going to be my first one. Years before, it's the same sort of thing, not just didn't come together in the final. Not nerves. I never got nervous surfing in heats. I thrived on it. I loved the pressure. I love sitting there with 2 minutes to go and needing a 9, or I love that stuff. That stuff got me excited. I knew that if the wave came, I could get whatever score was needed. So just be patient and wait. So it was, just didn't happen, Dan. It just, there was nothing. I didn't choke. It just didn't happen.
Just didn't go your way.
Guys surfed better. Judges thought the waves I had weren't the scores, but once I got that one, it was just like, let me at it. I'm going all the way.
You're always so cool, calm, and collected, bro. I knew it wouldn't rally you, so it was a matter of time. Proc, you got anything to ask and add in there, my bro?
Hey, Josh, you mentioned different types of conditions. And one thing about I realized watching you when you'd come over to the Hyundai contest was your ability to adapt to different types of conditions and surf really well. And I don't think people that are watching actually realize how tall you are. And so you'd look at you and go, oh yeah, I can get this guy if it's 6 inches to a foot. I remember that contest at Sandy Bay, it was barely breaking, and you were getting 9s.
Yes.
And all us Kiwi boys were going, what the hell is this guy on? We'd look at your boards and go, these are really light. How the hell are these working?
Yeah.
And so I don't know what you attribute that to, but it was just amazing to see you, not just in good size as a bigger guy, but in smaller waves in your ability to transition.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm just under 6'3", and sort of my whole career I've kind of been around that 90, 95 kilo mark. So yeah, big guy, and always lightness. I was always, even though I was heavy and big, it was all about being light on the board and letting the board run and try and get that flow as much as possible. I guess growing up in Noosa, our waves are really soft, super soft. Even though it's bowly and pockety, our waves are soft. So if you're not surfing in the pocket, you don't go. So I guess being on those high performance boards, you've got to surf in the pocket to allow them to have the speed and run. And just growing up in Noosa, we get those waves. For me, my career, I surfed every morning, I surfed at lunchtime, and I surfed every afternoon. My whole career, I surfed 3 times a day. I didn't, not for hours and hours and hours, 20 minutes to an hour each surf, but I surfed 3 times a day. That's going to be on a high tide in the morning with offshore winds, maybe low tide at lunchtime, maybe cross shore, and then straight onshore in the afternoon. I made sure I surfed anywhere from, I lived at Pridgeon, grew up in Pridgeon, so anywhere from Pridgeon to Noosa. And I made sure I never surfed in the perfect waves all the time. So those afternoon surfs were shitty waves all the time, but they were the ones that I felt like I was getting the most out of. So when I'd come to events, where was the last Hyundai one we were at? That big on the West Coast. What was
that time you beat me and the judges gypped me at Piha. Yeah.
No, PR. No, the other one. The last event of the year.
Oh, Port Waikato, that other time you beat me.
But you know, those that was big. It was windy. It was wild. I felt like I had it over my competitors when the conditions got tough. It got windy. It got wild. It not so much big, but when the conditions got tough, most people don't go surfing. Most people were drinking beers in the afternoon or doing other things. I went surfing when the waves were like that. So I guess that's something for the kids out there watching, you know. Yes, we love surfing perfect waves, but make sure you put the hard work in when the waves are junky and you know your competitors aren't doing that. So when the conditions are like that in a contest, you feel like you've got a leg up on them. And that's what I loved. That one event at Sandy Bay that you're talking about when it was small, that win for me goes down as a real special one too. I was traveling with Mitch Sermon at the time, a young up and coming hot surfer from here on the coast, and we were traveling together. And like Dan, I was in the water. I was comboed in the final, just thinking, this isn't my event to win. You know, Mitch is winning. He's beaten Harley. I'm in third. I'm super stoked for Mitch. I'm telling him stay calm and just hang on. You know, you've got this. And 5 minutes to go, I got a bomb and got a 10 and cut it back out and looked at him and I'm like, maybe you got to start catching waves because I'm coming. And I just knew, like, I didn't think I was going to win that final. I was sitting there helping guide Mitch through it. You know, I wanted him to win his first major contest and beat Harley, who was one of my rivals, you know, a friend, but also one of those guys. And that one, I turned it around in 5 minutes and got a 10 and a 9 something and ended up passing them both and winning the contest. But I remember that contest at Sandy Bay, and that was a good time.
Yeah, that was a real moment, bro. As a you know, I was kind of looking at longboarding and getting into the whole competitive thing and seeing you, as I saw it, at the peak of your powers, was really something to aspire to work towards. Not just your surfing and style, but that you had a professional act, and you carried yourself, which seemed to really resonate well across you know, sponsors and the like. I got one other memory, bro. Was I came over to an event at Broken Head, the Suzuki Pro.
Yep.
And it was a build up between, you know, who's going to take it, Harley or Constable. And you'll remember the waves at Broken Head, that they were just out of this world.
Yeah,
to watch that final, because you were talking about rivalry, so I was like pretty interested, you know, you being in the game for so long, thinking about who might be your rivals going through each era.
Yeah, well, definitely. That tour was amazing, and it was a very special time for Anna and I in our lives, because that tour kicked off. We had to spend a bit of time in WA. Obviously, at the time, Harley and I were just going for it. Contest. If I didn't win the contest, Harley won the contest. Vice versa. Every now and then, Pioli would pipe up and have an amazing event and maybe get a win or a Jackson close. But you know, if it wasn't me, it was Harley, and vice versa. And he was a bit younger than me, but yeah, he definitely brought the best out in my surfing. And thanks for the kind words about, you know, the competitiveness. I guess for me, it was my job. You know, when I went to these events, it was cool to catch up with everyone, but I was there to win, make a little paycheck. It wasn't much, but definitely do the right thing for my sponsors, get the win. I'd come home. We have such a great backing from the local community. The papers would do stories, the news would do stories. So I could provide great media and great to my sponsors because of that. So for me, I was there to do a job, and Yeah, I loved it. And I love competing. I definitely felt like I would do my best surfing with a rashie on. I'd free surf in the morning and have a little warm up, but as soon as that rashie came on, man, I just felt like I was untouchable, and I believed that, and I loved it, and I still do. That's why I'm 40 this year, and I've gone back to compete on the WSL because I love it. But yeah, that Hyundai tour was really cool because Suzuki tour. But yeah, we got to travel. We went to WA, had 2 events in WA. We had an event here in Queensland, and we went to Vico. So it was a really legit tour. And obviously each event was prize money, but at the end there was a car for the winner. And I went into that last event at Broken with the lead over Harley. And it was just whoever placed higher in the event. And like you said, the waves are pumping. Broken Head, it's one of the best right points in Australia. And it was, it's 3 to 4 feet. And and like I said, I love those pressure moments, and got to rose above and got the win and got the car. But that was at the time, that year was special. And I guess I was so focused to win the car and provide and make money for the family, because Anna was pregnant with Jed, our firstborn. So that, I guess that was my motivation. At the time she couldn't come to all the events, so I was there, I was doing a job, I was providing, and that was the motivation to get the win and win that tour. And I like doing things, I like trying to be the first guy to win something. That was the first year that tour started. I wanted to put my name and stamp my authority that, hey, I was the first guy to win that. And we had we had so many good longboarders in that era, Jackson and Pioli and GT, Belly, Jai Burns, the list goes on. And all those guys were world rated guys. Yep. So Dave Symes. So I had to be at the top of your game if you wanted to beat those guys. And it was pretty cool. Super cool.
So Josh, mate, you discussed what it takes, especially for kids and that listening, is like, mate, you surfed in the morning, you surfed at lunchtime, you surfed in the evening. And one thing I noticed about in Australia is that everyone trains in that onshore shitty surf. And that's why they're so good. Anyone can surf when it's good, but not everyone can surf real good when it's shit.
And I feel like, that's where I really felt like I had it over Harley and Taylor. So going on Rivals Proc, that I feel like those were the 2 guys that at the time, Taylor just met Nava. He was spending a lot more time in Oz. So I was spending time in California. We were competing against each other there. And then he was coming back home or back to Oz and competing and doing our events too. So the 3 of us, I felt like when we were in Oz, it was us 3. When I went to the US, it was just me and Taylor. So those were the 2 guys that definitely made my surfing keep going up and up and up. I love competing against both those guys, and definitely inspired me to do my best surfing.
Mate, Tyler, your rivalry with Tyler, mate, you're the only guy, in my opinion, that could go toe to toe with Tyler Jensen. I remember your Timmy Patterson board, you're talking about?
Yep.
Man, I ain't seen anyone do shit on a longboard like when you got that board, bro. It was just like, what the heck is going on here?
Yeah, well, I had that board for 5 years. That was my contest board for 5 years. Every contest, I didn't free surf on it leading into an event. I didn't free surf it before a heat, but then I'd pull it out and surfed it. And man, I resprayed the thing to try and give it more life, to feel like I had a fresh new board. I think it had like 5 different spray jobs on it. I was so blessed. I got to work with so many great shapers, and I had lots of boards. I was always getting boards. I always had the same style of board. I didn't try much different stuff, but I would go to a shaper. Hey, this is my favorite board. Can you give me your interpretation of that board? And Timmy nailed that one. I've still got that board. It's downstairs. That board was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. And in any condition. Yep, for sure.
Hey Josh, you mentioned I think it's cool segue into shaping and shapers. and you know, having ridden lots of different boards, and probably, you know, kids growing up now, they might stick to one shaper. What did you see as the benefit of working with different shapers, and I guess figuring out your craft?
Yeah, it's crazy, Brock, because I had Dave Boyd was my shaper. If I say I had a shaper, Dave Boyd was my shaper. He was my mentor. He's my best friend. He was from Victoria. He shaped my first board. I think I was 18. I just left McTavish at 18 years old, signed with a company called South Coast Longboards down in Victoria. And Dave was shaping for them at the time. We had a great relationship. We'd met the year earlier. And yeah, he just became just one of those people in my corner my whole career. So he was my shaper. He was my head shaper. I worked super close with him on everything, but you've got to stay fresh, and you've got to keep him honest as well. So I would go to California and I'd say to Timmy, "Hey Timmy, this is what I'm riding. Give me your little spiel and what you think, how you can improve this board. The board's amazing, but see what you can do to make it better." And I did that. I worked with so many shapers, but Dave was my guy. I had great boards from Timmy. My brother-in-law in California was a phenomenal shaper. And the back end of my career, those boards that I was riding for the Hyundai Tour through New Zealand, they were all from my brother-in-law, Garth. They were epoxies. It was the first time I went to an EPS foam. So that was like I felt like, oh man, I'm on the magic board. And then I'd work with some other people and find another magic board, and then changed over to the EPS. So yeah, I worked with lots of shapers. Dave was always the guy that I always had those boards in my quiver. And then I'd go off and work with Timmy. And I had a run with Timmy for a couple of years. And then we went off the boil, so I didn't go back there. And my brother-in-law, Garth, then we were on some gold for a couple of years. And I did that. I just worked with different shapers. I rode a board from Bill Stewart one year. It was Colin McPhillips. I was hanging with Colin, and I won a contest on Colin's board. So I went to Bill Stewart and said, "Oh, can you make me some boards?" And he wouldn't make me boards. He goes, "No way! I don't want you beating my guys." And everyone I went to was always up for it. You know, they wanted to make boards and work on stuff, but he was the one guy that knocked me back.
No way.
Yeah, he goes, "Unless you ride for me full time." And yep, I've got Colin McPhillips. He's winning world titles. I've got Josh Moore and these great team riders I don't need anymore. So,
well, how come you didn't jump on board, Joshy?
I didn't want to be locked down to one guy.
Yeah, fair enough.
I feel like you can get stale. They can maybe get a little stale themselves. They start, you know, just banging them out for you. But if they've got competition, Dave all put in 110% every board because he knew that other shapers were putting in 110% and making me really good boards. But he wanted me on his boards. So that's why I kind of moved around, even though Dave was my guy. Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was very cool.
Such a top man too, old David Boyd. May he rest in peace. But sure. Mate, there's a board that you brought back from when you're on your trip back to Noosa that sort of influenced a couple of shapes at Classic Malibu. One was the Boss.
Yeah, 97. Was it 97?
You remember the Boss?
Yeah, it was 97. It was the first year I came back. We hadn't really seen that stuff in Oz before.
Nah.
We're all riding vintage boards, 1960s, or super high performance. There was none of this in between, which what we call logging or traditional boards these days. But I was surfing San Onofre and I'd see these boards and I'm like, man, those things are cool. What is that thing? It's not a vintage board and, you know, it's not high performance. So, I bought, it was called the Boss. It was 9.8, single fin, heavy glass, step deck. It actually had an edge in the tail, which logs these days are frowned upon if they've got edge in the tail. But
it was a scooped edge, It was scooped in the nose and scooped in the tail because Classic Malibu took the squid tail off that particular design, and that's what that squid tail and dry linen they were using.
Totally, and it was just I saw the board and I knew it'd be amazing at Noosa, you know, like 1 foot, 2 foot first point, the board was going to be amazing. So I chucked it in the board bag. I'm a board frother. I love everything, you know, whether it's single fins, logs, traditional, blah, 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 fishes, shortboards. I just love surfing and loving. But yeah, I saw that board and that was a pretty influential part of my surfing too. That slowed me down. It smoothed out my surfing. It really tidied up my footwork in nose riding. Taught me to nose ride really tight in the pocket, because those boards work better when you're surfing tight in the pocket. So that was a really good part of my career for sure. And I brought that board home. At the time, I was riding from McTavish, and those guys spat it that I kept riding this board. But I was trying to get them to make something like that and something traditional, and they didn't have anything. You know, in the late 90s, it was all high performance, and that's where we were going. So that's when McTavish came out with the Noosa 66, because they were trying to make me boards so I could ride these more traditional style. And I guess looking back at it now, I'm known as a HP guy. That's how I paved my whole career. But man, I was riding those logs way before it got popular, and that was late 90s that I was riding those and working with McTavish, trying to come up with a sick one.
The same with Classic Malibu back in those times. Like, you know, he took a few boards off, you know, some of those boards that you came back in. Mate, we were all delving into the logs back in those late 90s, bro. It was
that was pretty cool. I've got a good story on that board. I came home and in Evans Head in October. So it was October 97. I said to Anna, let's go to this contest and I'll show you down the coast. So we cruised down. We got to the contest. There was this sick bank, perfect right-hander. And I was in the Opens, still 17, surfed in the juniors, but surfed in the Opens, and had this final with Ray Gleave, my hero, my idol. Thought he was the best. That was the guy that I looked up to the most. And I had this final, but it was small at that stage. It had dropped off. So I jumped on the boss and rode the boss. And I still remember to this day, we were just going wave for wave, throwing pieces at each other when we were going past. And, and I rode that board and ended up winning the contest and beat him in that final. And yeah, that was a really special one, because he's the man, but I rode that board. So, and that board's been around. If Monty's listening, he might be out there.
Yeah, Monty's got it, has he?
Yeah, Monty's got that board, and it's hanging on the wall at his house.
Classic. Monty, man in the wild. Hey, any questions from the audience, Flo?
Yeah, a couple of questions actually. We have Dave asking, what would be the ultimate judging criteria for a longboard surfing event contest these days? For you coming from a high performance background, and we talked about logging and how it all changed and being back on the WSL.
Yeah, look, it depends on the conditions. I like the movement. I like the way the criteria is going. I like this sort of traditional longboard logging scene. Obviously, it doesn't work when the waves are 6 to 8 feet or close out beach breaks. So it's got to be a blend. I feel like it doesn't have to be too traditional that it's all focused on the nose. I don't think you have to ride traditional loggy boards, but just a smooth surfing, a smooth. Devon Howard is the longboard commissioner. I think the surfing that he does is bloody nice, and that sort of surfing I feel would be good, but they have to match the waves. We went to Taiwan last year and they were dropping out of the sky. It was 6 to 8 feet. It was howling onshore, and that's not the type of wave to do that sort of surfing. So if the criteria is going that way, which I like, I think it's beautiful surfing. It's a lot more marketable. People can relate to it a little easier. People can relate to someone looking graceful and flowing on a wave or doing a beautiful nose ride. People can't relate to us guys doing an air on a longboard. It's not achievable for most surfers. So for the sport to grow and people to fall in love with it at all ages and all levels, this more traditional path is going to be pretty good.
So do you think that it's the traditional path? Like I said, I like the way that you're talking about without going too traditional, to still create that blend of maneuvers off the tail and nose. You know, what would be, I don't know, your premium spots, you know, was it going to be 3 to 4 foot max?
Yeah,
2 to 3 foot running
yeah.
points, or is it beach breaks out of the question, or where do you think
look,
WSL are going from here?
Yeah, I don't think beach breaks are out of the question, but the right beach break, it has to be the right beach break. You could think of a San Onofre, St. Clemente, California. It's a beach break. It's a rolling wave. It's not top to bottom. It's not hollow. There's time and room on the wave to ride more of a traditional approach. I'm not 100% sold on it has to be single fin and it has to be no edge in the tail. Because I'd been to Taiwan before last year, I built equipment for those waves. I was riding 9.6 by 23.5 by 3 inches thick. They were glassed heavy. They were Volan glass and double 6-ounce decks, and they were heavy boards, but they had edge in the tail. They were rolled V in the tail. It wasn't double concaves, but I had little side bites in them to hold in because it's big and bumpy. I think it's the criteria. Depending on what the waves are like, we have to adjust the boards to the wave and the surfing a little bit to the wave. If it's 6 to 8 feet and bombing, we don't have to be so focused on the nose, but we don't want to be bashing the lips and doing aerials. We want it to look smooth, graceful, and separate ourselves from the shortboard tour. If we can look like longboarders and do it gracefully, and let Italo and John and lay crazy carves and huge airs and rotators and all that sort of stuff, then we have a point of difference, and then it's really marketable, and WSL can market both. Hey, here's this great lifestyle of cruising, looking great, and here's high action. And then I think there's room for both of them to grow.
Because that's always separated us from the shortboard guys is the longboarding has always been a different culture to the shortboarding, and I totally agree with you know.
And don't get me wrong. I love to jump on a HP and belt the crap out of it and do airs and that stuff. But I think in the way of marketing and letting the sport grow, you know, let's pick locations. Noosa, Byron. Let's get back to Kaikoura.
Gisborne Midway Pipe, Gisborne Pipe, Northern Makarori. Come on down, Josh Constable.
Let's go. But there's so many great locations out there to showcase great surfing, and I think WSL are trying to get there, and they're doing a pretty good job at the moment.
Okay, Proc, do we want to highlight any other things in his stellar career before we move on to maybe talking about his creative army?
Oh, I think we should talk about the world title, brother.
Yeah.
I think. Well, we got the world champ on 06, Costa Rica, was it?
It was.
Costa Rica. Tell us about it, brother.
Yeah, it was a really good lead up. I had, again, great boards. I always worked on my boards. I spent a lot of time in the shaping bay with my shapers. Had great relationships with my glasses, my sanders. I hung out. I annoyed the crap out of them at the factory because I just wanted to be around it. Wanted them to always be giving it their best effort when they were building the boards. But I went prior to Costa Rica. I stopped at California. Longboard magazine were doing a two contest tour. And they had this contest leading into Costa Rica. So it was at Huntington Beach. Like I said before, I love the wave, and spent a lot of time surfing there. It was only down the road from where we were staying in St. Clemente. So yeah, we had this Longboard magazine put on this contest, $10,000 prize purse at the time. That was good. And most of the best guys in the world were there. It was the LA's that sort of point to get to Costa Rica. So I got in, went to California, got over the jet lag, hung out with the family over there, went up, surfed this contest, and just found some rhythm, and surfed against Taylor and Colin and Joel and Bonga, Kanoa, all these amazing guys, all these icons of our sport. And I just found rhythm and started early in the contest and ended up going on and winning the event. So I was buzzing. I jumped on the plane a couple of days later and left with my brother-in-law. He came down to hang out with me on the trip. So yeah, I was buzzing. I just won this contest in Cali. Got down to Costa Rica. We're at this beautiful left point. The waves were head high, super rippable. I love surfing my backside. And it's very funny because I come from a right-hand point, but I felt like my surfing on backside was stronger than my front side. Maybe not my tube riding, but definitely my backside turns. I could get the board very vertical, and I felt like I was more powerful surfing backside. So yeah, I started. So the year before, I got a 17th. I was just outside the top 16 to get seeded further in the event. So I started in round 1. But it worked in my favor. There was some easy walkthrough kind of heats those first few rounds, and got some really good momentum and understood the wave really well because I had time to spend through these early rounds. And it was just pumping, and I was having a good time. I was hanging with my brother-in-law. The resort is on the beach where we were staying, right at the bottom of the point. And everything was just fallen into place. That I was carried that momentum over from California, and we had a bit of a few lay days in the middle. The swell changed direction and the point stopped breaking, so they had to find a backup location. We ended up driving a couple of hours down the coast to a beach break, and it was just perfect A-frames. Like felt like I was surfing out the front at home at Pridgeon or Sunshine. I was like, oh, what's going on? This is just meant to be. So I just felt good. I felt comfortable. Obviously, I didn't go to the event thinking I was going to win because Joel Tudor was in it, and Bonga Perkins, Colin McPhillips, these guys that had dominated our sport for so long. I knew I could beat them. I knew I could compete against them. I had been for the previous 5 to 6 years. But there was just something. I was just feeling it the whole time. Waves were coming my way. I wasn't nervous. Just sit there. And anyway, we moved down the beach, had a couple of rounds, and I made it to the quarterfinals. And the contest went on hold for another day. So that night I was back at the hotel, and I rang Anna, and I'm like, hey, I'm into the quarters. This is pre-internet, all that sort of stuff. So I'm ringing her. Hey, I've made it into the quarters, surfing against Joel. She's like, oh, cool. No worries. Good luck with that. Joel's the man. And anyway, so we jump in the next day, jump in the car, drive 2 hours back to the backup location. Waves again were firing, just these perfect peaks, lefts and rights. And just went on a roll that day and made it through that heat. I can't remember who I had in my semi-final. And then waves were cooking. 4 foot. And came up against Ned Snow in the final. Amazing surfer at the time too. He was young in his career also. Probably 2 guys that you weren't thinking at this stage with the draw that we had with all those guys. Like I said, you probably at the start of the week wouldn't have put us 2 in the final. There was all these guys that had won many world titles before us. So coming up against Ned, I felt super comfortable because I'd taken down, I think I surfed against Bonga as well. And just these guys.
Wow. Scalps.
It was funny. My brother-in-law's in a band, and he had this song called, the lyrics went something like Stars Are Falling. And that morning we were listening to it, and I kept like playing that in my mind, like these stars are falling. The stars of the contest are falling out of the draw. And yes, I got to the final. I felt super calm, and there was that real contingency on the beach. The Hawaiians definitely dominated the tour. They were strong, powerful surfers, and then there was a lot of Aussies there. It was all of them: GT, Belly, Burnsy, Bart, Wilson. We had a strong presence on the beach too, and it just went my way in the final. And I just felt calm from the beginning, picking off the right waves at the start of the heat, got the lead, and just never let it go.
And
so it's pretty cool.
The trophy that you've got to your right, mate.
Yep, here it is here. It's a little dirty.
Yeah, I was going to say, it needs a polish, mate. Give it a clean. Show it some respect.
Got to get the boys onto that.
Yes, you do.
Earn some pocket money. But yeah, it was just one of those things. Like that night, actually, by the time I finally got back to the hotel, it was super late. I rang Anna and I'm like, I won. And she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I've won. And she goes, you beat Joel? And I'm like, no, I freaking won the contest. And yeah, it was a trip. I'll never forget that conversation because, yeah, well, I looked up to those guys and to take them all down and consecutively, you know, like I did the week before in Huntington, and then just the roll kept going, and yeah, it was sick.
Well, mate, you deserve the world title, Josh. There's no doubt about it, mate. And I'm glad you did it because you deserve it, and you got it. Have you got any more questions before we start delving into a couple of more career highlights and moving on to Creative Army?
Yeah, we got heaps of questions, but I do a few quick ones. Who's your
favorite? It could be a 3-hour podcast, Josh.
What's that?
It could be a 3-hour podcast.
Yeah, I'm up for it. Are you guys up for it, or is it getting late over there?
No.
Yeah, let's go.
Josh, who's your favorite longboarder to come out of Noosa? Like, people are throwing in a few names, but you probably know them all. Jay Lee, Harrison, Trento, Jesse, Mark.
Yeah, look, there's so many amazing guys to come out of here. I guess for me, someone that influenced me when I was a kid was, he's not from Noosa, but was a big part of my life. One of my sponsors was Noel Woods.
Nolly Woods!
Yeah, Woodsy, Kiwi guy.
Yeah.
No.
He was one of my sponsors at Beach Beat, one of my early sponsors. Really taught me a lot about surfing, but how to act, how to represent companies. So at the time, I was getting free boards from those guys. McTavish was shaping them, Beach Beat were glassing them. I rode for Quicksilver at the same time. And I remember my first contract with Quickie was $300 clothing package. And I thought I was ripping at the time, super stoked. And at the time, Beach Beat were giving me boards, short boards, long boards. I was probably getting 10 or so boards a year, 15 years old or whatever it was. And I did this photograph for the paper from winning a contest, and I had my Quicksilver shirt on, Quicksilver hat, big Quicksilver logo on my board, and took this photo. And I never forget it. And I carried that through my career. But afterwards, I'm all stoked, and I'm showing Woodsy, and I said, how's this? I'm in the paper. And he goes, unreal. And then he sat me down and said, hey, think of it this way in the next time. Quicksilver are giving you $300 worth of clothes. We're giving you $10,000 worth of surfboards a year. Maybe chuck on a Beach Beat shirt or a Beach Beat hat, or make sure, because look after the ones that are looking after you. Quicksilver were, of course, but I never forgot that. And I guess, you know, the people that were paying the bills, I made sure. But yeah, anyway, so Woodsy, I loved his surfing. He rode shortboards, longboards. When I came home from California, I brought some stand-up boogie boards. I don't remember if you remember that, Dan.
Yeah.
And Woodsy was riding that. So he was just a frother. He loved surfing like I did. And I guess that's where I had that short, long, ride everything. And also Krista Boyts. He was a guy, he owned Noosa longboards. He was doing crazy hang tens, switch
hang tens.
Yeah. Just an older guy. So as a kid, I was looking at him going, wow, how good's that surfing? So those two guys were very influential. And then obviously Jai Lee is one of my best friends. We grew up together. Our parents were best friends. My dad and Johnny, Jai's dad, were best mates. We went to every contest together as kids. So I wouldn't say Jai influenced my surfing, but he was just a part of my surfing. We surfed every morning, afternoon. We goofed off together. His surfing was phenomenal, and we were just always out there pushing each other. And he didn't go down the contest path. He went that more traditional nose riding route, and I went on to have a professional competition career. But still, to go out there and we get to surf together. The kids are competing against each other, his kids and my kids at Mel Club.
Cool.
Yeah, so that guy, Jai Lee, is one of my favourites, hands down, and just he's a mate. And then obviously the surfing that Harrison's doing is what's inspiring me now. Even he's a younger guy, but that's the guy I'm looking at. It's smooth, it's graceful, so much flow, and he rides everything exceptionally well. And so for me, we've had a lot of battles over the years, especially now that I've kind of gone down this more traditional route and doing the Deus events. And he's the one that's pushing me like the Taylor and Harley did. You know, he's got the wood on me, and I just keep pushing, and he's a guy that's really aspiring.
So Josh, talking about, if I was to put two surfers, traditional surfers in a box, and you have Alice Nosk and Harrison Roach, two phenomenal surfers, two totally different styles. Mate, like for me, mate, I see the technicality of what Alex does, and sometimes he does that much, that quick, that mostly is missing.
Yep.
And then Harrison, who's the more simplified. Like, mate, how do you see those two, like, from a judging criteria? Like,
yeah, it's crazy, and it's there's so many people that are going to be on the Alex wagon, and so many on the Harry. For me, they're both phenomenal, and Alex is a good friend of mine. He's the first year he came to Noosa, he stayed with us, with Anna and I. Yeah, it's hard. You can't compare the two because they're so far apart. But for me, I love the simplicity. I love the smoothness and the flow of a Harrison. And I guess that's where my surfing's kind of been my whole career. Even though it was super high performance, I try to make it look and flow and look smooth at the same time. So for me, that's the surfing I like doing. And I guess that comes from our days of watching Nat Young and those guys. Are powerful and raw, but so smooth and fluent at the same time. Ray Gleave, Wayne Dean, Jason Blue.
Yeah.
For me growing up, I had so many people to watch, and the Australian surfing community and longboard community was so strong. So, yeah, we're pretty lucky.
So lucky. Yeah, Flo, we've got a couple of more questions from the audience.
Yeah, I think a follow-up to that, you mentioned Harrison and other influences. You're such a very accomplished surfer, but is there any element which you would like to add to your surfing if you could?
Yeah, totally. Especially now it's more traditional. So I said earlier that my backside was one of the strongest part of my surfing. It's now the weakest part of my surfing, especially with this logging career, logging style.
Yes.
I've only ever ridden a log at first point because you ride your log at first point, you ride your HP on the beaches, or you ride your shortboard on the open beaches. So I haven't quite figured out the correct line and setup. Obviously, I can nose ride backside and do all that stuff, but it's a weak part of my surfing, and I know that. And it's a part that I've been working on the last sort of 2 years to really sharpen that up. If we had a contest and there was a ride, I feel like I can match it with any of the top guys on the WSL tour right now, hands down. Put me on a left when it comes to more traditional surfing, and I've definitely dropped down, and so that's something that I'm working on at 40 years old. So if there's kids out there, you can never stop improving and stop working, and that's what I'm working on now, is sharpening up my backside logging.
Hey, Joshy, this year with Joel winning the Noosa Fest at 44, there's probably a little bit of tread still left in the tyre.
Yeah, totally. I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't think I could still win. Obviously, I've got a lot more distractions than what I had in 06 and through those early 2000s, because that was my full-time job. Now, obviously, family and business and blah, blah, blah. But no, I definitely feel like my surfing's good enough. The hunger's still there to compete and do well. and seeing Joel win, yeah, definitely can to go on, and I'm excited to see what happens. I haven't been that excited to compete on the World Tour the last 8 years or whatever. I didn't. It was just in no man's land. But the way the criteria is, the way that they're backing it, and the people we have around, it's definitely, definitely. I'm excited.
Bro, you're on mute, cuz.
I'm
I'm
mute.
talking to your loud.
Hey, what's that?
That's me. I was talking to myself. Kia ora, Kaz. Thank you very much for that, brother. Hey, look, before we delve into some more about the WSL and the relic and sort of stuff like that, where we're heading, mate, I want to just delve on your business, Creative Army. I was still around at the time when you sort of, delved into that. Mate, mate, can you give us a rundown on, obviously you've worked very closely with a lot of shapers through your professional career. I've worked with some of the guys that have been influenced around your career. But mate, how did the Creative Army come about? Because you went from that high performance background like we all were, and then you saw something a long time ago that went, you know what, we're going down this more classical path. I still prefer you as a high performance surfer, but you're a great longboarder no matter what. So what mate, give us a rundown on Creative Army.
Yeah, I guess I just came to a bit of a crossroads in my career. I kind of lost all my major sponsors. So I was kind of went from making an income and providing for my family. And within kind of a 6 to 9 month period, I pretty much lost every sponsor. Not due to anything in particular, nothing that I did wrong. It was just a crossroads in where the surfing, where longboarding was going. The tour was backing off. The magazines were sort of dropping away. So for me, I was like, what's going on here? So I had one last crack, and that was the year that I put in a lot of effort. I did all the Hyundai events through New Zealand. So I came over to kind of show sponsors like, hey, I'm active, I'm doing events, I'm winning. Then did obviously Noosa Festival, had a big year, competitive year. And at the end of the year, there was nothing out there. You know, I couldn't provide for my family. So I was like, oh man, I've set up so many board labels for companies. I signed up with 2 brands early in my career that didn't manufacture longboards, but I brought in a shaper and brought in glass shops and created these board brands. So I knew how to do it. So that was like, you know what, I've built these brands up for other people and they've been my major sponsor. And then at the end of a contract, it's all over. So I have nothing, you know? So I was like, you know what, I'm doing it for myself this time rather than going and helping and creating something with someone else. I'm going to do it myself. Took a leap of faith. I wasn't a shaper. I was definitely a designer. I definitely had a lot of influences on what I was writing and spending a lot of time in the bay. So I knew what I liked and I knew how to kind of achieve it, but I just had to put it into my hands and do that. So yeah, I guess that's how it started. It was, all right, let's do this. Let's build boards that I want to surf. I'm not going to be chasing the tour anymore. There's no sponsorship out there. The tour's weak. So I'm gonna build a brand and build surfboards that I want to ride and boards that people will enjoy to ride. And that's why it was a little bit more traditional. I could see there was noise over there, you know, it was starting to make noise and there was something in it, and the performance side was feeling like it was backing off. So yeah, I just went back to all those boards and conversations I had with shapers and worked on it. Met some really cool guys. Darren Symes, I know you know him, Dan. DS.
Yeah, Dazzler Symes.
Yep. He was a big part of it. So
wow.
Rewind a little bit. Bob Cooper, I spent a lot of time with him in the last little bit of my career. I was lost. I didn't know where I was going in life, and with the career, I had this amazing career, but it was all kind of coming to an end. So I jumped in the bay with him and spent a lot of time, and we built boards together, and I kept telling him what I wanted and how to do it. But he was a shaper, but I was telling him how to do it.
Yeah.
And he goes, you know what? Here's the tools. Here's the shaping bay. You do it yourself. You know what you want. Just do it. So that was kind of the start. And then I met Darren Symes, a phenomenal shaper. Grew up longboarding. His dad was a great longboarder.
Ghost shaper to Simon Anderson,
yeah,
Josh.
He was Simon Anderson's ghost shaper. He made every board. He made Simon's boards. He's that good.
That's right.
Phenomenal surfer. And he knew he got what I was trying to achieve and the boards I wanted. So it was really cool. So I was working with DS and explaining and working on stuff and designing boards on the Aku files and just started playing around. So I'd go with Darren and we'd shape and do these boards and finish off these boards. And then he just kept, pulling back more and more that I was in the bay by myself doing it. And fast forward to 12 years.
12 years?
Here we are. But he was the guy. He was a big part of that taught me, explained, showed me. And then obviously I worked with some amazing glassing companies and doing these cool colors. Anna's got that sort of artistic side. So she's very heavily involved in the colorways and I guess the brand was all about creating boards that I wanted to ride, that I love to ride. Surfing comes easy to me. It's something that I've done since I was a kid. Someone picking it up at 40 or 50 years old, it's not easy. Surfing's hard. The waves move, the ocean moves, the waves continuously moving. It's never a still moment. So I wanted to make these boards that were easy for people that improve their surfing. And as they improve their surfing, the board started to come into its own. So that's the boards that I've created. And here we are. A couple of Australian titles later from myself and some team riders that I've had. My kids riding them. And I feel like all the boards I'm making, I'm surfing them. I know the feelings that when I'm selling it to somebody, I know what I'm talking about because I've ridden that board. I understand it. My dad's mid-60s now and his body's broken. So I'm building a board that is an easy paddler and nice and stable for him to give him time to get to his feet. And that's what the brand's all about.
So look, I've got one of your boards, Josh. Got one off you for a long, long time ago, and I've still got the thing. Mate, you had a couple of shapes. I guess a couple of shapes was at the Seahorse. And what were those early ones that you did? And now you've gone.
Yeah, so I've kind of got three sort of loggy style boards, if you want to call them loggy style boards. The Sweet Love, which is the first one you got, Seahorse, and then I've got the Barber. So the Barber's kind of, I started on the Sweet Love, put a lot of time and effort into it, felt like I nailed it and got that correct and right. Then I moved on to the Seahorse and really put some more effort into that. But the last sort of 5 years, we've been on the Barber. Still make all the other ones, but definitely for me, the Barber is that it's a real blend. It's kind of where I like to see the surfing style go. Nose ride's phenomenal, sits in the pocket beautifully, crazy levitation on the nose, but it's got a little more pulled in tail, which creates that nice arc and you can do the turns. Don't get me wrong, I'm a performance guy. I love laying the board over on a rail and driving a turn. So I still want to do that. I still feel like we're going to nose ride and go fast and get out onto the shoulder. We have to get back to the pocket somehow. So I want the board to still be able to turn and come back to that area again. So the Barber's,
Barber,
the Barber's awesome. It's a great blend. And then I do some sort of all-rounder models. The Jive Plus and the Jetta, they're probably two favorite models, and they're from names obviously of my boys. And I rode the Jet 9.6 Jet in Taiwan last year. Rode the Jive in New York as well as a Barber. So the boards that I'm riding are what I'm making for my customers too. So they're not super high performance like what we were riding 10, 15, 20 years ago.
No, but beautiful tints and resins combinations.
Yeah, totally. And that's what we're all about. We want one, if you're not surfing the board, man, chuck it in the corner of your lounge room because they're beautiful. They're pieces of art. They're all resin tints, pigments, cut laps, polished finishes, cedar stringers. Yeah, and they're works of art. And we're pretty stoked on how it's going.
So hey, bro, you got GSI, Global Surf Industries, come on board. Obviously, how did that all come about? Was that like a partnership? Obviously, they're doing boards, I guess, for that retail market, but you still do custom stuff. So if I was going to come to you and say, Joshy, I need another custom board, you still do that sort of stuff? Or?
Yeah, totally. So how it works is, I guess, two parts of the business. There's my custom program that I shape every board myself. And then my team of guys, we glass them and we do all that. It's start to finish. We work on the size and model and the conditions that you surf it in and your ability. And then we build it from start to finish, all done here in Noosa. And then we've got the GSI side of the business, which is amazing because I can't build boards and send them around the world. Costs and freight and keeping up with those sort of numbers. So to come on board, GSI to come on board was a huge part of the success of the business. Last year we sold boards into 72 countries.
Wow.
Their distribution is huge. They make something like 80,000 surfboards a year. They're the largest manufacturer of surfboards. Obviously they're not made locally, Australia, New Zealand. They're made offshore.
Yep.
But they do everything to our specs. The boards are made to our specs. I've spent time in the factories up there making sure quality control's good. But it just gives an opportunity to get my boards around the world. I couldn't do it any other way. And I know there's people out there that want to ride my boards and experience that the good vibes. So yeah, it's been a real blessing. Early on when I first started, I rang them and said, hey, I'm doing this board range and this label. Do you want to do something together? And they were like, no, it's a bit early. Let's see where you go with it and the path you take. And fast forward like 7 years later, they rang and said, hey, I think it's time, So yeah, obviously you're seeing the boards over there in New Zealand. The boards come out amazing. I've got a garage full of them that I'm riding too. I don't just ride the custom program boards. I'm riding those, and yeah, it's been really good. It's I guess a little reason why I've gone back on tour too, because the hunger's still there to compete, but also it gives me the opportunity to travel around the world, especially into the US where the market's so strong and we're selling a lot of boards and there's a lot of success over there. So the events are over there, so I can cross it over. I can go and visit stores and see retailers, surf with customers over there, and then do the event. So it's been working really well.
Awesome. Procky, got anything to add, bro?
It's probably a good time just to plug. So because we've got a pretty strong following here in Gizzy for the Longboard House, there's Blitz Surf Shop, and there's a whole bunch of crew down here that ride that jive model.
Yep.
And a lot of them were shortboarders that decided to pick up a summer board.
Yep.
And so they still wanted something that they could transition across, but they didn't want something super high performance. So they didn't want the same feel as a shortboard that they already had. So they picked one of those up, and Ewan and the crew down there at Blitz have been doing a good job of getting a few of those out here.
Yeah, definitely. The guys over there have been awesome, and they're moving some boards and just giving great advice, to the customers and getting the right guys. Like you're saying, that it's a great board that it's not super high performance, so you're not going to get on it and do the biggest turn of your life, but you get that feeling that you can still maneuver it and put it anywhere on the wave, and also get that flow and the run and everyone can appreciate it, whether it's the older guy or the loggers, that it's a board that you can't, when it's big and you can't ride your log, you jump on the jive, you can still go anywhere on the wave, but you still got that run and flow and it's got its V bottom, so it's rail to rail transitions are really smooth. So yeah, it's super cool, and stoked that the guys down there are really enjoying them.
Hey, bro, I've got a new housemate. He's wanted to come say hi to you.
Come on, Kig.
Yeah, brother. How are you? Looking fit. Looking fit, mate. Looking fit.
He's got
He's
a girlfriend now, so he's on a training
here in
program.
Gisborne.
You didn't want her to run before it's too late.
Hey, Flo, we got any more questions before we get into some WSL and Relic, and then what's next for Josh before we start wrapping stuff up?
Yeah, totally. So obviously a few viewers from New Zealand, and they're interested in your experiences on the Hyundai Tour, and especially in Kaikoura. So that was from Kelly Ryan. I don't know if you guys surfed against each other, but yeah, just maybe your most memorable experience in New Zealand.
Yeah, well, obviously, New Zealand's got a special place in my heart. My mum's a Kiwi, was born in New Zealand. So as a kid, we spent so many Christmases coming over to visit the family and all the relos and spend time over there. And my dad's a surfer. He loves it. So we'd come and see all the family. Most of at that time we're in Auckland, and then
I think you're Ngāti Porou too, bro. I think you're Ngāti Porou, aren't you?
He's kahununu all day.
But yeah, so we'd spend heaps of time over there as a kid and travel around and surfing everywhere. Dad was always chasing waves when we were over there on trips. So yeah, so I've always loved New Zealand. It feels like a second home to me. Obviously spent lots of time, the connection with all the Kiwi boys coming to Noosa, and then in return going over, Dan and Kelly and Darren and all these guys. It's obviously we've welcomed them into our Noosa community, and in return when we go to New Zealand, it's like home. It's their family, you know. So I've enjoyed the competing, and the Hyundai Tour was phenomenal. At that time, there was plenty of events. Prize money was great. Great locations. We surfed sick waves every time. For me, I come over, see my relos in Auckland, and then jump in the car and go off to events. So yeah, it was epic. Probably, I think I love Kaikoura because the waves were so good and it was so remote and so beautiful. We're sitting in the lineup and look out into this ocean, and then turn around and here's these rolling hills with snow on the top, and the waves were filth. Meatworks for me was one of my favorites. I remember that first year. It was solid. It was 4 to 6 feet, some bombing bigger ones, and you could just showcase at the time the longboarding that the judges wanted was super high performance, and those waves just allowed us to really rip in and get it done. But later on, as a tour, there was more events, sort of not so much down the South Island and in the north, and brought up before, Procky, about that one at Piha, and it was at the bar, and it was freaking amazing. 3-4 feet reeling. Yeah, it was sick. I love that. That trip was pretty cool too, because at the time my parents had moved back to NZ and spent 6 months back in NZ, just traveling around, and mum hanging with all her family and doing that. But Jet was young. What year was that? Do you remember?
I think it might have been like 2010 or 11.
Yeah, so Jetto would have been 5 or 6 years old, and we came over together to, obviously, for him to see Granny and Pa, and yeah, so came over and hung out with my parents, and they came out, and we were camping there at the campground, and yeah, it was just super cool. And just Jetto and I. Anna was at home with Jive at that stage, and yeah, and the waves are pumping, and yeah, it was super cool just to do that, and yeah, and the waves are amazing. So all those events were amazing and great times. And we spoke about that Sandy Bay one that for me as a contest result, that was a fighting to fight back in that final was really special. But the whole tour was sick at that time too. Taylor was doing the events as well. Harley, the competition was high, and at that time you boys were all flaring and surfing amazing. So it was it was good times for sure.
So hey, so moving, I guess, from that to New Zealand and heading down towards where we're sort of going with this whole WSL caper, while we're talking about sort of comps and stuff. What's the comparison with the WSL and the Relic? Because you've surfed in both, Joshy.
Yeah.
You know, the first year with the Relic, they had a modern and a log.
Yep.
Then they brought it back together as surfing against each other. I remember watching you at Malibu, and mate, if you're on your high performance, it seemed like, mate, how do you judge a classic and an HP in one heat?
Yeah, so it's pretty crazy. It's a really cool concept that the Relic that they did. Obviously, the first year they split it, HP and log, two different divisions.
Yeah,
I really like it because it separates it, but at the same time it separates it, and that's the whole reason why the sport went downhill the last 10 years, because there was such segregation, and when we need to be working as one on one track or one path, so the sport grows and the next generation can get paid, and the sponsors will come and the support will be there. So it was cool. But also it wasn't cool. But yeah, that first year we surfed Malibu. It was pumping. It was 4 to 6 feet, flawless, amazing waves. And yeah, I was rusty. I'd been out of the sort of singlet for a fair while, especially on that high performance sort of platform. First heat I had Phil Rasman and Mouse, who was Matthew Moore from South Africa, my travel buddy on tour. Amazing surfer. And had a bit of a shaky first heat. I got second. I beat Phil, and Phil was current world champ at the time. So it gave me confidence that I've still got it, but I was rusty. And then I came up in the second round. I had Harley, and I was like, yeah, all right, here we go. The showdown again. I was super excited. The waves were pumping. And I didn't win the heat. I got second. And lost. It was man on man, but the surfing I did in that heat was like some of the best surfing that I've done. But I was on the tail. I blasted him. I out surfed him on the tail, hands down, and probably just didn't add in enough nose riding, and I hadn't realised how much of a shift there was, that you had to really spend time on the nose, especially hang 10. Yeah. You know, the waves were 4 to 6 feet. It wasn't perfect nose ride waves, but yeah, I definitely just missed the criteria a little bit and lost. Yeah, I was disappointed on the result. So the following year, we went back and they changed it. So the first year, the first event was Malibu. Second event was Trestles. Malibu they were saying, hey, it's a home of traditional surfing and more classic style, so that we want to see you surf a little more classic style. Trestles, we want to see more performance. It's a performance wave. And so I looked at that going, yeah, that's a pretty cool concept, you know, ride some more of a loggy traditional board at Malibu and then jump on a HP down there. But so they combined it. There was no separate categories. But I got to Malibu. I had performance boards with me. I took a bunch of boards, but I got there and it was shoulder high, reeling. It was perfect. I rode my 10-footer. I was free surfing on my 10-footer. Harley and Taylor and the boys are like, what are you doing? Get off that thing. Like, get on your HP. But I just didn't like that's the way they were surfing the HP. When we were doing it, it was all about, man, get that thing as straight up as you can. Get the fins out the back of the wave, go fast, lay it on a rail, and obviously nose ride. But it had changed that they were trying to force these awkward nose rides on HPs and they were holding back. They weren't letting it go. They weren't giving it 110%. Harley's got the best roundhouse in the game, and he was holding back on those wraps. And Taylor's one of the most vertical guys, and he was holding back on that. I didn't like that sort of surfing. I didn't like that it was half. They were half doing it. So for me, I was like, hey man, the sport's growing, but we need it to go. But I'm riding my 10-footer and surfed unreal. Definitely felt like I won the heat. Didn't win the heat because I was against a guy on a HP. They said they wanted to see more traditional surfing at Malibu, but it was a huge uproar. There was that was the changer, you know. Because there was all this, so many heats. Guy on a traditional board, guy on a HP. HP guys were making it through at a time when they were saying they wanted to see a more traditional surfing. So I don't know if you remember, the following event went to Malibu, to Trestles. They split the criteria again. And they went 1 HP, or you'd choose your division that you want to surf in. So I guess for me, I put my flag in the ground and was like, hey, I'm all for this new movement and this more traditional style. It's what I've been surfing the last 10 years with my brand and building boards around that sort of style of surfing. So I went that way. And unfortunately this year, it was pretty exciting news that it didn't get signed, sealed, delivered, but Relic were going to roll their events into the WSL. And
Wow.
Yeah. So, it wasn't totally done deal, but that's what it was looking like. So we were going to have Noosa, Malibu, Trestles, New York, and they were going to kind of looking like they were going to be our 4 events for the year. And we would have seen beautiful traditional longboard surfing at those locations, like pretty sick locations for that surfing. So
is that still going ahead? Is that still no?
I don't think it's going to happen. Obviously, no one can travel now. No, but so next year, hopefully they keep that going, and that might be the tour next year. So pretty cool, super cool.
Watch the space, I guess.
Yeah, but I liked what the relic was good, because their thing, they came in saying, hey, we want longboarding to be represented well. They did a really nice broadcast. They did really nice on the beach, great tents. They looked after us. They treated us like professional surfers. We had not lockers, but we had space for our boards and great food. And that's what they're trying to say to WSL. Hey, if you're going to represent longboarders, let's get them in great waves so they can put on a great display. And the surfing that we saw in those Relic events was phenomenal. People were ripping.
Oh, just while he's talking to himself again, bro, I'll just jump in, hey? Nah, just wanting to jump in a little bit. So I'm one of those guys now. I'm a full-time pro logger, bro. That's what I do now.
Yeah, sick.
And for better or worse, it's brought me back to surfing. I didn't surf for like 5 or 6 years. I just surf in the summer.
Yep.
I just focused on my family and the like. But getting back into longboarding has been getting back into logging, and we've got a pretty strong, I guess, log scene here in New Zealand now. So we've got basically 6 events that are all connected around the country, but then they end up at this contest called the Single Fin Mingle, which is run by Ambrose. You might know Ambrose. Yep. So I can fully support what you're saying around knowing our product and a package that's really easy to watch for customers out there and the everyday surfer. And when we're looking at, like you said, competing with the WSL, the Johns, the Philippes, it almost has to be completely different field to actually attract the different market, because otherwise we're just targeting the exact same market and we're always going to come second.
100%.
We got a question from Pauline Pullman. She's Winnie Paul's mum. I don't know if you know. Yeah, Winnie.
Yeah.
So she's asking basically the same thing. Should we have she's got a couple questions. Do you think all categories of longboarding have a bigger, better future then shortboarding. So I guess what she's saying is what we're talking about there around what the future, what is bigger and better for longboarding moving forward.
Yeah, well, totally. I think where they're going is they're on the right page. You know, this more traditional, like we said, it's more people can relate to it a little easier. You know, not everyone lives in perfect points like Noosa, but you know, if people are riding the right style of traditional board, they can have fun even if their beach breaks are 3 to 4 feet. But I think if the sport wants to grow and get back to where it was in the late 90s, early 2000s, I think they've had a great run at the HP, and it hasn't been able to get that momentum in the past 10 years. That this is let's try it, let's go this way and see where it goes. But for me, I love it. I'm enjoying my surfing so much. I'm surfing all types of boards, but I'm enjoying that sort of more traditional approach and working on beautiful footwork and cross stepping and nose riding and doing all that. And I do feel like the next generation will get a lot out of the sport if you know, the WSL keep backing it like they're doing, and we go down the path. And Devon Howard, the commissioner, is doing a great job. And as you know, how good of a surfer he is, when he's taken us down a path, we have confidence in him because he sort of walks the walk.
No, he does. A phenomenal ambassador, and he's doing a great, and like you said, moving towards that. If that's where we're going, and we need to support that and wrap ourselves around that to sustain longboarding, because at the end of the day, it's about longboarding and the lifestyle, and families always been tied to longboarding. It's always been about families. That's what separated us from the shortboard community. It's always been our history, our family involvement. You know, no egos, no attitudes, and just the pure essence of longboarding and nose riding and stuff like that. So, Josh, mate, where to next for you?
Well, I guess it's like I said before, the world's in a bit of a funny place. It's just we're in a holding pattern, so we're just cruising. We're here shaping. Kids are surfing, just doing our thing. But for me, I guess you know, I had all desire this year to compete on the tour again. Didn't get off to the greatest start this year at Noosa, but was looking to come back at Malibu and Trestles, two of my favourite waves, and then and have a crack. So for me, it's still a motivation. There's a goal there to win another world title and to take the kids and along the journey with me. You know, I kind of stopped when they were young. They haven't seen that part of what I've done, that I'd like to take them on that journey and show them what it's like and travel with them and experience it with them. So that's the goal. Obviously, the boys are surfing and doing events, so we're going to be going up and down the East Coast like I did as a kid with my dad. And we're looking forward to that over the next couple of years, and obviously shaping boards and doing our thing here in Noosa.
Mate, can we see you in New Zealand? You know, if we get a couple of these log events going, can we see you over here with the family, mate, coming back to see the whānau over here and be an ambassador and someone that we can get over to surf and talk boards? And
yeah, definitely. I love it over there, and all the trips have always been super fun, and everyone's so welcoming. So I'd love to come back over and surf with all you guys and help spread the love in the longboard world and do what we can to set it up for the next generations. And yeah, I'd love to bring the boys over and let them surf over there and get amongst it.
Mate, that'd be awesome, mate. Well, but just before we wrap up, we're going to wrap it up, Josh, but we want you to stay online. Mate, that's it. Is there any more questions before we go, Flo? No, that's it, mate. Josh, Constable, thank you so much for your time joining me and Proc and obviously Flo, our surfing development officer, on the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big round of applause to Josh Constable for his time. Thanks, Joshy. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Sign off on Facebook land.